Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are archived. You can find them anytime at ArtistFirst.com. And now here they are, two of the wisest people I've ever met, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Yes, welcome to the top of the mountain.
Oh, my goodness.
And Margaret, your guru, will be with you right now.
Oh, my goodness. Well, welcome to the Soul of the Everyman. And I guess we're under a bit of stress tonight, are we?
Oh, acolyte. Are we?
I think it's because it's the end of summer, the beginning of fall, and September was always a stressful month for a lot of people. There's new things beginning, getting things together, and a lot of endings happen in September. So I'd say stress is definitely a factor.
And I'm Michael Lyons. I will be your intro to the guru tonight.
You're a banana.
Hey, I'm here for comic relief.
I got it.
And you're right. Our topic tonight is stress, but it's not just stress from the point of view of, let's say, getting caught in traffic or having a flat tire or any of that sort of stress, which is obviously does happen to everybody, and everyone's life kind of has those sorts of stressors in it. But we're really talking about the type of stress which is traumatic, which causes you, and I'll just speak for myself, causes you to it's almost like a severe injury or a burn. You almost have to disassociate yourself. There's so much pain. You break your bone, you fall, you break your bone, and right away you don't feel it because your body says, well, this is just so much pain that we're just going to have to say, block that for a moment. You couldn't function if I let you feel
right.
everything that was going to be, that's happening to you right now. So the mind does that, the body does that with the mind, or the mind does that with the body. But the mind does it with itself too, because stress and trauma can be non-physical, and when you're undergoing tremendous emotional shock, you will suddenly get this feeling, and people have described it variously as sort of being disassociated, sort of being like
right.
you're, all of a sudden you're numb, and it's not that you're not able to feel; it's that your mind is saying, if I let you feel the full impact of this particular emotion, you'd be destroyed, you'd be disabled, you'd be unable to function.
That's a good observation, actually, because when the emotional hit comes, there is that, it's like a limbo land. A friend of mine had basically said, I feel like this is just all not real. The best way to describe it would be as a bad dream.
Right.
But I know that, this loss is there, but I don't feel it. So I look at that and go, well, what is it that is actually giving you that feeling of disassociation? Is it your mind? Is it your brain? Because the brain does that when, as you said, the physical shock hits. So does the brain itself do that because it knows that the impulses that are coming in are just going to overwhelm? Or is it part of your consciousness, your mind itself, that says, okay, we're going to push this off for a little bit because you need to take it slow. This will almost stop your heart from beating.
Yeah. I think there's truth to both those statements. I think that there's a physical survival component that probably from very long time ago when our emotions were perhaps not as strong, but certainly our physical bodies were under attack. So if you injure somebody so severely that if they were to feel the pain, they'd be certainly incapacitated and probably be killed by whatever was attacking them. So that evolutionary mechanism came into place where intense, sharp trauma causes numbness rather than pain. You feel the pain later. It's an easy leap to think that intense emotional trauma, which has the same, those same receptors, which, when you go through an emotional shock, emotional trauma, people say, it feels like I'm burning. I feel pain, physical pain. Okay, they do. You really do feel physical pain from a non-physical event, an emotional trauma. So those same receptors in the brain are being used to process emotional pain. And so the same kind of, let's call them like fuses or circuit breakers are in there. When some huge surge of pain, something that's going to cause pain comes into your mind or into your brain, it just says, I'm sorry, we can't deal with this right now. If we did, our heart would stop. Or something so bad, even worse would happen. We'd have a survival problem, existential problem. So the fuses blow, poof. And emotionally, you feel disconnected. Physically, and maybe everyone hasn't had this experience, but I have. You do something to yourself because you're an idiot and you're doing stupid things. You do something to yourself, and you injure yourself, and there's this gigantic blood gushing gash in your leg, and you look down and you say, "That's gonna hurt." But right at that moment, it just feels kind of numb. You're looking at it and go, "Man, that's just disgusting."
Yes. Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. But you don't immediately start screaming. People also talk about the same sort of thing with trauma. You could soldiers say, "I got shot, and I didn't even know I was shot."
Right.
I just felt numb. So the thing that our premise tonight is about these types of events, emotional events, let's talk about not physical events, are that for a period of time, and it can be a long period of time, you don't feel it. It's like I should feel worse about this. My son died, my father died, something horrible happened. I should feel worse about this, but somehow I just feel numb. And that period of time is very important. It's a period of time which, if you were able to feel it, it would probably stop your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do feel it, but you have to then. Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that the heartbreak disease, the it looks like a turnip. It's a Japanese name, the heart, but they've discovered that it is a real thing.
Oh yeah. Broken heart syndrome is what
broken heart syndrome. Yes.
Usually referred to, and it is not only is it real, but I don't know who did the research, but they said there's a actual deleterious effects. A loved one dies, and then they're monitoring the heart of the surviving loved one, and they see actual physical damage in the heart.
In the heart itself.
In the heart itself. You literally, and then people can die of a quote-unquote broken heart, because your heart really is broken. And it really has a physical component as well as an emotional and mental component.
Right. And there are only now, I mean, people have said that for centuries, that it's a broken heart. They died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
But because of our technology, we're able to see it actually happening.
Right.
And it is such an indicator of how intimately connected your emotions and your soul is to your body, and the impact that your soul has on your body. Because, losing a loved one uh, there's no words to describe that kind of soul pain, but there's no physical damage being done to your own body. But
Right.
still. So just that connection is, how do I say this? Frankly, we're finding out much more in our modern technologies about the actual process that's going on between the brain and the body, as well as the soul and the thoughts, because they can do real time scans.
Exactly. And the body-mind connection, which is sometimes how it's referred to, it goes both ways. You know, your thoughts have a physical effect, and your physical well-being has an effect on your emotional well-being. You know, we've had on Dr. Bump, the holistic medicine, on several times, and he often talks about the body-mind connection and the fact that he will talk to people when they first come into his office. They basically say, "Well, I just don't feel well. I don't feel good." And instead of just prescribing something, he says, "Well, let's take a couple of hours, maybe longer, and really figure out what it is in your life that maybe was past trauma, maybe it's present stress, that is causing this kind of a physical effect to manifest itself." So that's been, it's something that was observed over thousands of years, certainly in Chinese medicine and many other Eastern medicines, and then coming into the present day, we now can kind of put some, quote unquote science fact on top of the observed phenomenon. But if we just take it as fact that there's a body-mind connection, we have what our premise is that when these events occur, and they occur unfortunately in everyone's life, there's an immediate disconnection from this very traumatic event, and then depending on the person, and I think really in some ways, Margaret, how much they're in touch with themselves, or how much they're willing to kind of reconnect with that pain, there can be a trauma and then a healing, or in some cases there's a trauma and then there's like let's call it an encystment. The trauma is balled up and pushed away and pushed down, and what you end up doing is, in essence, is fragmenting yourself into, let's call it normal you, which has to go to work every day, and broken, shattered trauma you, which you just put in a ball, and you said, we're not going to touch that. We're not going to go there. But that works for a period of time, but then it becomes toxic.
Right. No, it's true. Because when you are in an event that is so overwhelming that you can't process it in that moment, or you may not have the time to process it in that moment. Sometimes it's just such an emergency that you have to allow things to come to almost like a safe space in order to open up that box again. It's like you take it and you put it in a box. But the box that you're actually putting it in, whatever the event is, it's actually pieces of you. This is why we say fragmentation. You actually have to take pieces of your life force to encapsulate the trauma of that moment and put it in a box and put it away until you actually are in a place where you can actually look at it and have enough time and energy to process it. And that's what I find happens to an awful lot of people when they're trying to, okay, I've got to live my life after losing my son. And I have other children. This is a discussion that a lot of moms in the pediatric cancer wards, we would have this discussion. And it's difficult because, it depends on the family and the family dynamic that's going on. And everybody looks at everybody else and thinks, well, it must be a little bit easier for you. Because, well, you have children, this was my only child. Or, and that's when the discussions would start about, child is your child. You can never replace them, no matter how many you have. But when you have other children, the demands that are being required of you are immediate, and you love them no less than the one that you've lost. So internally, you must make the decision to, yes, I've got to push forward for them. They're not responsible for any of this. The whole thing, we're going through all of this as a family, and because you love them, you're like, all right, let me focus and take care of them, and put the memory of whatever the event was in this box. Just put it aside for a little bit and let me focus on them. But it's true. You can't just let it sit there, because your heart knows that you've ripped a piece of it off to encapsulate the trauma. And it still burns. It's still raw. And it needs to be dealt with. Processing that pain is not something that you would voluntarily do otherwise. It will slowly kill you if you absolutely refuse not to look at it. But when you make the decision to take the step and open it up, re-experience it, you understand that the only way to handle pain is to go through it. You can't push it aside. You can't get rid of it. You can't blow it up. Everyone would like to somehow blow it up and never see it ever again. But if you think about it, what you're actually blowing up is a piece of your heart.
I think before we go too far past it, I think you've got some perfect points there. And to extract them a little bit, in everyone's experience, some trauma will occur, and because we can't feel it at the moment, you basically take, let's call it a snapshot, but it's really a complete full copy of you, a piece of you that is just as much you, that is in that moment. And I believe what happens is you put that burning, suffering piece of you into stasis, a box, whatever you want to call it. And if you never go back, it becomes a psychosis, a trauma. It becomes PTSD. It becomes something really toxic and terrible. Because and then there's a huge temptation to not go back, because when you're walking through hell, they say keep on walking. But the problem is nobody wants to even enter hell. And yet hell comes. You're suddenly handed something that you don't know what to do. You don't know how to handle. You rip off that thing, that piece of you that's burning, and you say, okay, you just sit there and burn. I'm going to close the top of this box, and maybe I'll never have to open it again. But you've done something you've almost killed a piece of yourself. You've put a piece of yourself not just in a box, but you've stopped it from growing, from changing, from healing. So you've taken your foot, which is on fire, and you've cut it off, and you put it in a box. Well, your burning piece of you is still there. It's still burning, still suffering, still right there. So when you go back,
Still in hell.
still in hell, and someday you'll go back and you'll just touch the box, and you say, all the pain suddenly comes flying up just from that little touch. So the echo of the pain is still there. You go, I don't want to go there, but we have to go there.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, the little you, the little girl, the little boy, the younger you, the younger woman, the younger man, whatever, the part of you that you left in the past, the part of you that was shot and left for dead in the past, you have to go back. You have to go back as far as you need to go back. You need to pick them up and reconnect. And you don't have to do it alone.
Right. You can't do it alone. That's the truth. You need that divine hand of mercy to come in, because the suffering brings you to your knees, and the strength that you need, it can only come from divine spirit. So the strength and the courage to do that, because humans left to themselves will probably continually chop off pieces of themselves until there was nothing left.
We know we all know people who are doing exactly that.
Mm-hmm. And that's not why you are here. You're here to live, but you can't live fragmented.
You can't live pain-free.
And you can't live pain-free.
That's the temptation.
And that is actually the message that a lot of society gives. It's like, you're hurting, here, take this pill. But it doesn't work that way. You, as a human being, and this is something I'd always thought of, we're not immortal. We go through all kinds of trauma, but we were designed to heal. Human being was designed to heal. So let's embrace that. Let's choose the healing so that we can come to another place. It may not be what you thought it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. You have an ideal somewhere, or the perfect life, but that's not what's down here. Perfect you? Who are you? Where in you? What gifts are in you? What capabilities are in you? And when you embrace the humanity, understanding humanity can heal, but it needs to choose to heal.
Exactly. And I think the temptation, of course, is that not that you don't want to heal, but that there's two things that I believe keep people from going back. The first is, of course, the immediate trauma, the pain. But the second is this reluctance to kind of, you say, I'm okay, I'm all right, I'm good, I've gotten past that. Well, what you haven't, this is the exact, language is lovely from that point of view. You've gotten past it, but you haven't gone through it.
Right.
Okay. You something horrible happened, and you tore off that burning part of you, and you threw it someplace where you didn't have to deal with it. But you got past it by sacrificing a piece of all of you.
Mm-hmm.
There was this wonderful movie with Lily Tomlin called All of Me.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very funny movie. Has nothing to do with this, but the only part of it that has all to do with it is that I believe that as we go through life, we can take multiple paths, even with the same person. You can kind of split yourself. But at some point, you must bring yourself back together. Because unless you're whole, you can't truly grow and truly develop. You leave a piece of you back there. It's like you man down, left them in the past, left them back there. If you don't go back and get them, go back and get that piece of you and bring it forward, then all you've done is that you have a piece of you which is left immature, undeveloped, hurting, but it's powerful. The power that it has to hurt you is subtle and occult, and it comes in and makes you do, it changes who you are, because it's truly a piece of you. It has all your power, it has all your ability to influence you and to hurt you. And even though you say, well, I've got it all boxed in, well, sometimes those things, they get out again when you don't want them to get out. And they can cause deleterious effects in the rest of you. Like
Yeah, no, it will affect your physical body unconsciously.
Yeah.
You've shoved it, when you say you put it in the closet, what you're doing is you're throwing it into your unconscious mind instead of your conscious mind. And that you have not really gotten rid of it. It's
right.
Still there.
Yeah.
But now, since you don't have any light on it, it's working all under your radar.
Okay.
So you may have suddenly a triggered reaction to something, and you don't even know why.
Exactly.
But that unprocessed piece that's still hurting has come up, and suddenly it spews.
Right. It demands and captures a piece of your reality and your present, and takes you out of yourself from that trigger. You lose where you are in the present moment, because that pain roars up and grabs onto that trigger and then makes you feel something. It says, I can't be denied. I can't be denied. Feel this for a minute. Feel this for a second.
You must, and it's almost like a safety valve where you must feel this, because if you don't, it really will wind up killing you. So being courageous enough to take steps into embracing that piece, because when you go back and find the piece that you've kind of put into that unconsciousness, you are bringing back that piece of you, but not the experience. Maybe that's the best way to put it. You're not... the exercise that are usually when I'm speaking with someone who's trying to process. Okay. Is to take a moment and realize that the piece that's coming back to you, allow yourself to see the person that's bringing that memory back. Is it a small child? Was this an event that happened when you were little or older? And then they're holding the event in their hands. You have to extend your hands and take that ball of energy that contains the event from them and say, thank you. You've held this for me for a very long time, and you're no longer needed to do that. And it releases that piece of you from being the container of that traumatic ball of energy, because now you are older and capable of walking it.
Yeah, and I think we're coming to the end of this half hour, but I think we should pick up with that once we go back to the studio and have a little break, and pick up with that right there, because I think that's a very powerful way, and I think a very constructive way to help deal with these things. But let's take a little break.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lyons, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
Hi, this is Pamela Foland. Check out my new book, Megan the Pet Whisperer, available at Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Please visit my website, www.pamelafoland.com. You're listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network.
Taking God on Patrol is a first-person account of the world of law enforcement from the perspective of a Christian police officer in the fourth largest city in America. From speeding car chases to the crossing of the thin blue line, author Mark S. Cariner seeks to find God's biblical truth in a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement. And check out Mark's newest book, The Tactical Heart. Both are available at Amazon.com.
Hi, my name is Christina Garlick, and my new book, Nevada Rain, is now available. It's a sci-fi fantasy story for ages 14 and up. I hope you check it out, and of course enjoy. Also, you're listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network that has a station for everyone.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir. There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thank you for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Want to send us a question or comment? You can always do so at dj@artistfirst.com. Now back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And yes, we are back for the second half hour of The Soul of the Everyman. And tonight's show is about stress, or really, I guess it's not stress the way people think about stress. It's really more the way people. The better way to say it would be trauma, but it's emotional trauma that causes deep pain. And we've been talking about what people do when they experience emotional trauma, and the temptation, or even beyond the temptation, the reaction to deep emotional trauma or to repeated emotional trauma is to encapsulate it and to say, well, I can't deal with that right now. I'll deal with it later. And then the temptation is maybe never deal with it. Just leave it there. And just at the last part of the first half hour, you were telling us a little bit about how when you do want to go and try to reconnect with these pieces of yourself, or this piece of yourself that you may have left in the past, how to do it, and sort of a technique. So maybe we'll pick up right there.
Oh, all right. Well, it's considered soul retrieval, where you are going back and taking the piece of soul that had been holding the trauma so that you could go and function in the moment. And again, usually what you are doing in that soul retrieval is that you are in a very grounded state, first and foremost. You must be very grounded to do this.
You're actually helping someone do this, let's say.
Yes.
So
No.
this is sort of, I mean, we were mentioning before last half hour about you don't have to go through this alone. You can get help, and this is one of the, there are many other ways, but this is one of the ways.
And when I say grounded, I mean energetically you are connected to the earth, to this moment. You are very aware of the body you are in, where you're at, the time, the place. But your energy is connected, grounded into the earth like the roots of a tree. And all your energetics along your spine are active. And your crown of your head is also open, so that you are open to God's divine grace. So that this flow becomes your origin, if you would, your center point, you understand that this is where you come back. Because soul retrieval is very tricky. People will get lost in it unless there's someone there who understands how to anchor you in your reality. People, if they're not anchored, they can lose themselves and their identity.
Almost like a psychosis.
Mm-hmm. So when you're in that grace, connected up to the divine heartbeat of God and of the earth itself, you have the strength to be able to look at the trauma that you have decided that you are going to process. And usually the first step in that is to allow your breath to carry you into that very calm and centered state, and then open up and allow an image or a form of you that could be, if the trauma happened when you were a child, it may be an image of you as a child. And again, holding this ball of energy. And the energy, you can really go into different descriptions. The people who are doing this will have different descriptions of who's holding it and what the energy looks like.
Mm-hmm.
But the basis of it is you as the conscious person, grounded and abiding in that stillness of your heart. You extend your arms and ask to receive everything that this being in front of you, a little child or whatever, is holding. And allow them, her or him, to give it to you and receive it fully in your own hands. And then thank that little being that is still you, that piece of you that's been holding this memory, this trauma for all this time for you. And letting it know that it did good.
Mm-hmm. And I think you also are accepting that part of you back. You're accepting back the gift. The gift is you back again. The gift is, yes, the trauma that you now have to reintegrate, and the part of you that you left holding that trauma that you welcome back.
Yes, the part of you that was holding the trauma has to be reintegrated into your own soul. But it was fragmented off because it basically had the assignment of holding this until you were ready.
Right.
And for some people, it's like, I've been holding this for most of your life.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that little fragment of you has got to learn about the you that you are right now.
Right.
And being in that heart connection with God and the earth and that heartbeat gives you the wisdom and the strength and the love to enfold that fragment and bring it back in to you. Because it's only by love this is going to happen. If the fragment of you that comes to you sees that it's not love that's doing this, it won't give it up. Because basically says, well, I was designed to hold this until you were ready. And unless that love is there, that's my signal that says that you are ready.
Right.
But if it's not there, I'm not going to give that. I'm going to hang on to this.
And that analogy, that mechanism, is exactly right. You have to reconnect with the earlier trauma, and you have to accept it, love it, and you have to go through it with the piece of you that you left back there. And so there's that gift is a crystal memory, generally speaking. If you go back and you really take that back, it's a crystal clear memory. It's the trauma. But, and this is, I believe you mentioned this earlier last half hour, the overwhelming pain that caused you to make the fragment isn't there in the same way, because you're not the same person. The fragmented you was the past you that could not handle this, that wasn't able, didn't have the tools. So part of what you're doing is saying, I'm ready now to look at this with different eyes. We spoke a couple shows ago about, the near-death experience.
Mm-hmm.
And in an NDE, many people have what's called a soul review. That happens because you may be crossing over and you've got to do that at that point. But
you mean a life review?
Yeah, I'm sorry, life review. Excuse me. They have a life review. But this meditative acceptance experience is sort of a slow motion or a guided life review. You go back to that part of your life that you encapsulated, and you're able to look at it with a different perspective. The life review in the NDE usually have a different perspective. You can see where you were, but with different eyes, with the eyes of you now at the end of your life, maybe. Well, the mechanism that you use to reaccept an older part of you that you fragmented off and was done in trauma is similar, because you're bringing it back, accepting the younger you that was incapable of dealing but was holding, and saying, I'm ready now, and I have a different eye. I'm able to look at the you that I was, or the me that I was. These pronouns. You're able to look at the older, younger you. You're able to look at that other person and say, I'm different now. I've matured. I need to bring you back because you need to be in touch with who we are now, who I am now.
You need to come back to wholeness. You
Exactly.
can't be fragmented.
Right.
The holes in you are not to be.
This is a wonderful point too. You should explain a little bit about that. The holes that you can see in people when they've done this.
Yeah. Energetically speaking, whenever this happens, when you've gone through something, you wind up giving your energy over to whatever that episode was or the memory was. And I mean, as parents, there's plenty of holes that happen in your soul because you've had children. They put you through stuff. I mean, that's the most common experience.
Children are giant holes in you.
Pretty much. And to become whole, a whole soul, means that you are voluntarily, and I think I said this before, you choose to heal. You choose to become whole again. And once you've made that decision, you must go into that connection to God in the spirit mode, the divine spirit mode, in order to receive the strength and the courage and the grace to go through this. Because this is not for the weak. It's not. To be able to lift your head up when you have nothing but Swiss cheese as a body and say, okay, no, I choose to be whole, not fragmented any longer.
Mm-hmm.
And I choose this beyond my comfort, because I understand that this is not going to be comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I had broken off pieces of myself because I needed to handle the moment. But now I choose. And I will walk through this with God's grace. And He's always there. In fact, when you were talking about the life review that happens in an NDE, a friend of mine that had undergone that had said that she was observing her life. It was like a 360 screen that she was reviewing it all, but with her was the presence of God saying, is Jesus saying, look at this. And it becomes crystal clear at that point. Because the pain, you realize how much pain you've received and how much pain you've caused. And you need to be grounded in that divine love to be able to look at it fully and say, okay, I see now. And you have to have the courage to forgive.
This is an excellent point. And perhaps we should have folded it in earlier, but let's fold it in now. Part of the emotional trauma is sometimes guilt, and part of the emotional trauma is sometimes anger. When you feel guilty, you feel the need to be forgiven, and when you feel anger, you feel the need. You feel that something was done to you. You feel that you were wronged. Part of the acceptance of both of those traumas, the one of guilt and the one of anger, is forgiveness. You must allow yourself to be forgiven or to receive forgiveness if you feel guilt. And you must forgive. Somebody once said that holding a grudge against someone is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Right.
And it's a very apt sort of metaphor, because you ruining your life, holding anger and resentment against someone and feeling that I'm never going to forgive them, all it is in essence, it's allowing them to steal a portion of your energy and life. And in the sense of trauma, it's saying that part of you that you put away that's going to be angry forever at them is a part of you that you can no longer access, because you're cut that off. Well, you've cut off not them, they're fine, they could care less. You cut off you in the state of, I will never forgive them.
Mm-hmm.
Or the guilt state is, I will never be forgiven. But the trauma of saying, I'll hold a grudge till the day I die, is also cutting you in half. It's ripping you apart. And so the love, the forgiveness, the ability to forgive is so central to a lot of trauma. You have to say to that person who hurt you, who maybe is not even with you anymore, and there are many public examples and private ones certainly, people who've been terribly wronged, raped or other types of terrible trauma when they were helpless young people. In essence, even if they're the person who wronged them is no longer even physically here, you have to forgive that trauma in order for your healing, in order to bring yourself back, or you're still ripped apart.
Mm-hmm.
So this is central, really. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, no, forgiveness. Because that experience, I mean, where the child was raped, there's nothing that they could do about it. And to stow it away somewhere and not speak of it. But there's a part of them that, they feel the shame.
Guilt.
But the shame is deep.
Shame.
You basically feel unclean. All right? And not worthy of love.
Yep.
And that, convincing that part that feels unworthy of love is very difficult, because the person has made a judgment call on themselves saying, yep, you are not worthy of it. And will always hold that piece apart. That's part of the fragmentation.
Oh, it's terrible, because you've almost condemned a piece of you.
Mm-hmm. To that. And when you realize that forgiveness is the key, you have to forgive the event, because the piece of you that's still suffering needs to be redeemed. And that redemption, again, as I said, you have to be in an intimate connection with God in order to have the strength and the courage to do this, because it's devastating. Devastating. And trying to convince that piece that you are loved as you are, because it basically feels it's been marred and
you said it before, unclean, unforgivable.
Yeah, to the point of not being able to set themselves in front of God. That feeling of, I'm just going to die because I'm so dirty. I'm so imperfect, so soiled, that I cannot present myself before my God, because He is pure.
Right.
And therefore, instantaneous. There's a part of you internally that understands that. I mean, there's stories in the Bible about how they had to carry the Ark of the Covenant, and they had to go through all these rituals to carry it. And it's because those rituals were protecting the people who were touching the Ark. God's power is so high and so pure that anything touching it that was unclean or impure would die. And there's a part of a person's soul that understands there's a purity level that is incredible. But to feel so dirtied or sullied like that, and to have that trauma happen when you were so young, because you don't have the tools to begin to climb out of that God-forsaken hole. So to understand that God loves you as you are. As you are. There's nothing that you have to do and that you can do to earn that love. He is unconditional love. And to be embraced by that, to even begin to think that that's possible, for some people, is a major shift in thinking.
Right. And that mechanism is exactly how you can redeem those pieces of you, both the piece, let's say, that you consider condemned for whatever reason, and then also the people that you have condemned at that level of your life. If you do the same thing, you say, this person has wronged me, and I will never forgive them. That you have shut the door, you have condemned them, and the only person who's actually suffering from that other than, let's say that there's ultimate justice and that they receive whatever they get for the actions that they did. You're actually taking a piece of you and tying up all that energy in holding the grudge, holding the condemnation, holding it fresh in your mind so that every time you think about it, you can think of what they did to you.
And, refusing to let that go, you have to be honest with yourself. Yes, you may have a real reason. If it was in a court and the judge would say, yeah, you have a reason to hold that kind of condemnation towards that person, that grudge. But it also locks you in that cage.
Right.
And do you love yourself enough? I mean, you have to be honest. Is the reason why you're holding that condemnation is because you feel powerful while holding it? And do you really want to continue to live powerful like that, but pitiful in your life?
Exactly. Exactly. And I want to go back. The whole thing that you said about the judge is, yes, you're right. You're right. They did wrong you, and you are right that they should be punished for it. But here's the key: it's not up to you to hold them accountable, and it's not up to you to be the judge. You say they wronged me, but forgiving them doesn't absolve them. It just frees you. People get stuck right there. They think if I forgive them, it's like I'm absolving them of responsibility. No.
Or saying that, well, it's okay.
Or condoning their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And the key of all of this, again, it's sort of a little bit off of where we were, but it's important. These types of traumas where you feel like you have to be the judge, you have to say, no, they were wrong. But my forgiveness frees me from the cage, frees me from the trauma that they did to me. And yes, I don't care, the whole, there's a song, God may forgive you, but I don't. It should be the other way around. I forgive you. God may not. hey, you and God have to work this out, but I'm going to forgive you for my own health, for my own soul.
My own soul and my own sanity. And
my own sanity.
And my own peace.
My own peace.
The peace of the heart must become the first concern, your first focus in your life. Because you realize without that peace, life is fragmented.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it, too, because when you have all these holes and parts of you that have been left behind and are sitting there holding grudges and feeling guilty, you have no peace. You got to spend all your life making sure those grudges are warm, making sure all those dungeons are full, and making sure all those lepers are kept in their cages and unclean, and it makes you someone who has no real life and no peace. The forgiveness, the sweetness of forgiveness, the wonderful blissfulness of letting these things be.
You let them go, and you give them to God, because there is a grand equalizer out there, and understand that your moment right now is dictated by you. So do you choose? Do you choose to live, or do you choose to die? Because if you abide in all the grudges and all the what could have been, you are basically embracing death and not living in the moment that is right in front of you. You have the freedom and the ability to take the step towards life right now. Do you choose to do that?
So important.
Mm-hmm. And it's got to be very, very clear when you make your choice. You know, if you make your choice rashly, impulsively, you've got to understand, well, there's a reason behind that impulse. What's motivating me? What haven't I seen?
Yeah. And I believe that what we've seen is that this show is coming to an end.
Ah. Alrighty then.
So please forgive me for everything that we've done.
Oh my.
I'm going to forgive everyone. And please, thank you very much for listening to The Soul of the Everyman. And I'm Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret. And have a good evening.